Hello, church. People in the back, hello to you. People up top, hello. Good to see some familiar faces. Good to see so many new faces. Good to see that we've got representation from both the South England Conference and the British Union of Conferences. It is an important day, and this is an important church, and I am honored to be here. This is a church with a very long history, and judging by just looking around the room, it seems to me that this is a church with a very bright future as well. Praise be to God. There is a whole science to first impressions. Some of you may be familiar with some of it. Traditionally, it has been believed that it takes about 7 seconds for someone to look at another person and make a judgment about them, just by looking at them. Before they say something, before they do anything, just by looking at them, we make judgments. We make conclusions about what people are like. Some of you have looked at me before I even said a word, and you've already decided certain things in your head. And some of it happens even without our will. It happens subconsciously. That's how we are programmed. Some new research has now suggested that even this estimate of 7 seconds is way too long. Apparently, we are capable, according to some research, of making decisions about people in 100 milliseconds. That is 1/10 of a second. That's how long you need to see someone and already decide whether this is a person that you trust, whether this is a person that you like, just based on your first impression, based on what they look like. And of course, because of this, there is now a whole science of how to improve or how to carefully manage the first impression that people get of you. And people have written books about this, especially, in the context of, for example, employment and business and networking, not to mention dating. There are people who have made their whole careers around trying to help other people carefully manage and curate and control the first impression that people make of them. You see, impressions matter. They matter so much that people pay money to be told how to improve the first impression that they make. In many cultures, impressions matter very much so. I just came from spending a whole month in my part of the world, in the Balkans, going through different countries, visiting family and being on holiday and preaching and doing all kinds of things. And in my part of the world, you see, we are part of this number of cultures that have this very intricate balance between shame and honor. And you're always, whatever you do, you're either shaming yourself or you're honoring yourself. You're either improving your standing and your family standing, or you are degrading it. In everything you do is judged based on this scale and measure of shame and honor. And in my culture, and I'm sure in many others, and you can probably testify to this, impressions matter very much so, especially at certain points, certain important moments in people's lives. None more so than at weddings. Weddings are the time when you really want to make a good impression. Weddings are the time when you have to impress everyone. Weddings are the time when everyone needs to walk away speechless because of what they have experienced. Our gospel reading that we just heard is the setting of this story is in the ancient Near East, in Galilee, which is kind of a mixture at the time, was a mixture of different Mediterranean and Near Eastern cultures. And all of them had this very profound emphasis on impressions and on shame and honor. And my cultures come also from a kind of mix, kind of a crossroads between different Mediterranean, Eastern European, and Near Eastern cultures. And so I know that people, when it comes to a wedding, I know that people will save for years. I know that people will live abroad and live in one room with 10 tenants and sleep in a shoebox if need be for years. But when it comes to the wedding of their children, they will spend lavishly, extravagantly, because this is the time where you need to show off your wealth and your power and your might, and the name of your family needs to be glorified. And in those days, in the days when the wedding in Cana took place, this was the norm. People would save for a long time. And then the wedding itself sometimes would last for several days, sometimes even a whole week. I once attended a wedding that lasted for 3 days when no one was invited. You just showed up. I didn't know a single person at the wedding, but that was the culture in that particular place where I was. And this is a time where your wealth must be displayed. This is a time when abundance must be experienced. And this is the time when nothing should be lacking. And yet, at the wedding in Cana, something went terribly, terribly wrong. We are told that the wine gave out. The Greek literally says the wine failed. And I can preach a whole sermon just on this, the failure of the wine. I can tell you how this world that we're living in is just one big wedding party where everyone is role-playing and everyone is trying to, maintain a good impression and pretending to be better, wealthier, happier, wiser, more successful than they are. And then how we do this in real life and we do this online on social media and how we are always trying to curate and carefully manage impressions that others have on us and how we are relying on many things to help us in this pointless endeavor, and how we are relying on wine and in fact many other substances, and how we are trying to always mask or blur or cover up reality because we see such a discrepancy between what we want reality to be and what reality really is, and how we are all just poor and broken but yet trying to make sure that no one sees this, and in doing so rely on so many substances that all eventually fail because they're all inadequate and insufficient, and they're all just facades and charades destined to fail because we cannot change the truth, and they're all trying to alter our state of mind but they cannot alter reality. And I could say all of this, but that's maybe for another time because there's so much more to the story that we have to cover. But just notice that the wine failed. The wine gave out. That's how the complication of the story starts. The wine failed. And the implications of this were disastrous for the bridegroom and for his family. This brought shame to the family. They would now be the talk of the town. Can you imagine? We went to such and such wedding, and can you imagine? The wine gave out. Can you believe that? They had 18 years to prepare for this thing, and they couldn't calculate enough. Now imagine this bridegroom and his family. Imagine him now. Imagine the stigma that will now be on this family, even on the children of this family. Imagine who would now want to do business with him if his whole life, and the father as well, if his whole life he prepared for this one moment and he couldn't provide enough wine. Who would ever want to invest their money with them? It's a failed endeavor. So economically, socially, psychologically, this was a disaster for the family. The implications were huge and they will last for generations. But luckily, you may say, for the bridegroom, Jesus Christ and his disciples and his mother were at the wedding. And it was Jesus' mother, who, by the way, is never named in the Gospel of John. It was Jesus' mother who anticipated and foresaw immediately this disastrous, catastrophic future and wanted to avoid it. So she simply said to Jesus, "They have no wine." Now, I know that some of you can relate and can recognize this and can testify that this is true. But you know, there are some parents who never actually tell you what's wrong, and they never actually give you any instructions. They just notice the state of things. They just state the obvious, and you have to figure out the rest. There are some parents that will simply come to you and say, "The rubbish is in the kitchen." You know, although they might say, "All the lights are on." Or they might say something like, "It's after midnight." And you have to fill in the rest. You have to figure out what they mean by that. Of course, they're just stating the obvious, but you know very well that what they mean is the rubbish is in the kitchen and you failed to take it out, even though I reminded you. You know very well that what they mean when they say all the lights are on means, and are you going to pay for the electricity bill? You know that when they say it's after midnight, they mean, and what time do you call this? You're supposed to be here by 9. There are some parents that simply just state the obvious. They never give you any instructions, but you know what they mean. And you know that in those times when they just state the obvious like this, you know that the last thing you need to do is ask further questions. Or worse yet, talk back. It's just not the time to be doing that. And yet, it seems like Jesus is doing everything wrong in this situation. He's responding to his mother in all the wrong ways possible. At least that's the first impression. This is what he says. He says, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." And some of you are cringing already. He calls his mom, woman. That's worse than kids these days when they call their children by their first name. He called his mother woman? What? And then he literally says to her in the Greek, he literally says, "What to me and to you? What concern is this to me and to you?" The words are simply, "What to me and to you?" That's, I guess, the ancient Greek equivalent of maybe some of our modern expressions like, "Woman, whatever." Or "Woman, I can't be bothered by this." Or "Woman, allow it. I don't care about this. Woman, why are you bothering me with this?" Oh, Lord, have mercy. But you see, this is just the first impression. Upon closer scrutiny, we will see that while it may sound to us a little bit unusual to call your mother woman, this wasn't in fact a rude term. It simply describes a woman who is not defined by her relationships to other people or especially to another man. If a woman is called a wife, she is defined in relation to her husband. If she's called a sister, she is defined in relation to her sisters or brothers. If she's called a mother, she is defined in relation to her children, auntie, and so forth. But when she is called woman, she's acknowledged for who she is, by herself, just existing and having a life, an autonomy as a woman. That's what Jesus is doing. Elsewhere in the Gospel of John, Jesus is calling other people woman as well. When he met the Samaritan woman at the well, he said, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem." He wasn't being rude to her. He just acknowledged her for who she was, not in relation to other people or other men. To his own mother at the scene of the cross, he says, "Woman, here is your son." And then also to Mary Magdalene on Easter morning after his resurrection, he says, "Woman, why are you weeping?" He was not rude to any of these women. If anything, this term was never intended to be an insult or to offend. If anything, it was meant to empower these women and acknowledge them for just that, being women. They had an identity independent from relations to other people. He wanted to acknowledge and appreciate them as women. But here, I believe, in this gospel reading, I think that this response by Jesus serves even one more purpose. You see, he says that his hour has not yet come. While his hour may not have yet come, it was coming, and his ministry had already started. He already had some disciples. He already started the purpose for why he came onto this earth, and that meant that family relations needed to be reassessed or maybe renegotiated. While his mother may have been eager to see her baby boy manifest his full potential, he was now doing his Father's will. And we're not talking about Daddy Joseph. He was doing the will of his Father in heaven, not of his earthly father or his earthly mother. His ministry had started, and he was now functioning according to different priorities. He was even functioning according to a different time, a time that is so weird to us that we cannot understand it. A time when even after you're 4 days late when your friend Lazarus dies, you're somehow still on time. He was now functioning according to a different time and different list of priorities. So he's saying to his mother, "Woman, my time has not yet come. This particular thing is not on my list of priorities right now. I have bigger fish to fry. I have a larger mission to focus on. And by the way, it's not time for me now to manifest and to present myself as a hero. Not yet, because you see, there is so much at stake. People are not ready for it. I still need to prepare them. I need to teach them. There's so much work that needs to be done before I do what you're expecting me to do." And yet, Mary knows her son. She knows her son deeper than a surface level reading of the situation. She knows her son deeper than the first impression that we may get in this interaction between them. She knows her son in a way that only mothers do. So she gives the best piece of advice in the history of Christianity. She gives the most concise, most bulletproof, most 100% money-back guarantee instruction for how to succeed in this life, in this age, and in the age to come. She gives this instruction in 6 words in the Greek, in 6 words in my Macedonian Bible, 5 in my Serbian Bible, 5 in my English Bible. She simply says, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. And these are, by the way, the last words of Mary recorded in any of the Gospels. This is the last time we hear her speak. And fair enough, because to be very honest with you, there is not much more to say. There isn't much more to say. These words are still true and they still echo as the best advice and best instruction that we've ever heard in the history of this world. She's saying, do whatever he tells you. She says, I don't know if he will do what I expect him to do. I don't know if he will do what I suggested he should, but do whatever he tells you. Whatever he decides to do, just listen to him and do it. Just obey him. Just follow through and trust that whatever he tells you to do will be good. Dear friends, we can learn so much just from this response of Mary right here. We can learn so much as parents. I'm so happy that the parents are so supportive of the young people in this church. And I want to speak to the parents just for a moment. What we can learn as parents from Mary. Sometimes as parents we are so eager to see our children succeed in life, to do well in their exams, to get in the best unis, to get the best jobs and get the most money and be the best leaders in their communities and leaders in the church. And we see their potential. We can see what they're capable of. We know them since they were born. We know what they are capable of doing. And so sometimes we are so eager for them to meet our expectations. And we want the potential that we see in them to be realized, that we forget oftentimes that before they were our children, they were God's children. And before we had any expectations for them, he already knew what they will grow up to be. He already knew their whole future. And so sometimes we get so excited that we, whether willingly or unwillingly, whether knowingly or unknowingly, but we interfere with our children just so that we can help them reach our expectations and our dreams, fulfill our dreams for their lives. But we need to learn from Mary. She says, just do whatever he tells you. She says, I don't know if he will listen to me, but just trust him. So sometimes we need to trust that God who is outside of time, God who functions under a different set of priorities, in a way that we can hardly comprehend, we have to trust that even though our expectations may not be fulfilled when we want them to and how we want them to, or even at all for that matter, we have to understand that the best piece of advice, the only piece of advice that we can give our children, is to do whatever Jesus tells them. And to trust them enough that they will follow this Jesus and listen to him, and to trust Jesus enough to know that he will not let them go, and to know that even if they don't do what we expect them to do, that if they do what Jesus tells them, they will be fine. And even if what we see about where their lives are headed may sound dangerous to us, may even be scary for us, we need to trust them enough and trust their relationship with Jesus enough to know that they will be fine as long as they do what Jesus tells them to do. And then trust that the guidance of Christ, trust him enough to know that he will always lead them, always teach them far beyond anything that we could have ever imagined for them. And to understand that telling our children, do whatever Jesus tells you, is the limit, is the ceiling, is the maximum of everything we can ever teach them. So after hearing this instruction, do whatever he tells you, Jesus now decided, after hearing that she said this to the servants, Jesus now decided to do the most miraculous thing anyone has ever done in the history of this world. And that is to have his cake and eat it as well. He decided to have his way and also still obey his mother. I know that there are some of us in this room, myself included, who wish that we had this power, that we had this knowledge to know how to obey our parents and still have our way, or maybe even our spouses and still have our way. This is the most amazing ability that anyone has ever expressed or exercised. This is a skill that only Jesus had, I believe, and this is how he does it. First of all, he decides to obey his mother. He decided to save the bridegroom, save his family from the catastrophe and the disaster that was looming as soon as people found out that the wine had given out. So he decides to perform a miracle to achieve this. But, you see, he decides to do this in such a way that only his mother and the servants and the disciples knew what happened. So he still had his way, in that he didn't end up being the hero of the story. He didn't draw attention to himself, and yet he obeyed his mother and helped save the bridegroom and his family. And I'm sure you know the story. You've heard it many times earlier. There were 6 stone jars there for the purification rites, and there were various attempts to calculate how much they held in volume. But even the most conservative estimates still give us hundreds and hundreds of liters. And Jesus Christ tells the servants to fill them with water, fill them up to the brim. They do so. And then he tells them to draw some of this water and take it to the steward. Now the steward, if we're wondering who or what this person was, it was some kind of master of ceremonies. In modern terms, you might say that this was the event manager for the wedding. In some cases, this same word is used to describe a function that in modern times would be reserved for the best man at the wedding. This was someone who was in charge of the wedding so that the bridegroom can focus on having fun and being hospitable to his guests, but this was the person that was in charge of all the logistics at the wedding. So now, imagine these servants. Talking about being outside of your comfort zone, yeah? Imagine the servants. They've been given this instruction to take and fill these jars with water and then draw some water and take it to the steward. And imagine what they must be thinking as they're doing this. They're thinking, oh boy, I don't know who this man is and I don't know who this woman is, but they sound like they know what they're saying, and she made it sound like he's important and we should listen to him, but oh boy, are we going to be in some trouble. Oh boy, when we give the steward this water, boy, this might be the last wedding we're ever serving at. We might be kicked out in the street, you know. This is the most ludicrous instruction we've ever received so far. But hey, I guess she knows what she's saying, and I guess we should listen to this guy. And so they're carrying this water to the steward. But lo and behold, before this water touched the lips of the steward, it was transformed into the best wine he had ever tasted. And he was so impressed, in fact, that he called the bridegroom to say, everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now. The steward of the wedding is here speaking to the bridegroom, but I think we can see, and to the bridegroom whose reputation and future had just been saved, but I think we can now see through the lens of the gospel that what he's saying here to the bridegroom is actually a profound theological observation, not about this nameless bridegroom, but about Christ the bridegroom. He is saying everyone is concerned about the first wine and the first impressions. Everyone is concerned about the image that they project immediately. Everyone is trying to maintain a false image, an illusion of wealth, of safety, of security, of happiness. But Christ the bridegroom, he brings the true wealth and extravagance and abundance and joy, and he does this in his own time, and he saves the best for last. And you see, the Jewish prophetic tradition was full of these descriptions, these visions of the future age, the messianic age, the age to come, the age when the world will be redeemed. And in these visions, there was one image that kept coming up, and it had to do with wine. Listen to what the prophet Amos is saying. He says, the time is surely coming, says the Lord, when the one who plows shall overtake the one who reaps, and the treader of grapes the one who sows the seed. The mountains shall drip sweet wine, and all the hills shall flow with it. Listen to what the prophet Joel is saying. He's saying, in that day, the mountains shall drip sweet wine, the hills shall flow with milk, and all the stream beds of Judah shall flow with water. This image of an abundance of wine that is dripping and flowing even from the mountains is a characteristic of the Messianic age, the age to come, the age of restoration and redemption. And now, in the Messianic age, with Jesus Christ, this age had arrived, because Christ, the Messiah, the anointed, is now here. And where he is, there is an abundance. The wine never runs out. The wine drips and flows, and it never runs out. The bread, in fact, never runs out. The fish as well never runs out. In Christ's presence, there is always more than enough. And not only, by the way, not only does the bread not run out and keep coming, not only does the wine keep flowing, but it never fails. It never fails because the bread is his very own body, and because the wine is his very own life-giving and life-sustaining blood. And that's why it never fails and it never runs out. His blood can never fail. And I anticipate that when he was 15 years old and when he wrote this song, young Andre Crouch must have been reading Amos and Joel before he sat down to write. It reaches to the highest mountain and it flows to the lowest valley. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. So when Christ sees that we are trying to maintain our false impressions and to try and make it seem as if we've got everything under control, he probably shakes his head in disbelief. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he kisses his teeth in disapproval. But at the end of it all, he then steps into our situation. He may be asking, how is this a concern for me and to you? He might be asking, are you seriously making this a priority? But after that, he steps into our situation. And not only helps us he doesn't help us maintain an illusion of the good life, but he really gives us good life. He said he came to give us life and life abundantly, and not just abundant life here on this earth, but everlasting life in the age to come. So Christ is not concerned with first impressions, and that's because he's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and he's the end, which means that he knows the end from the beginning, and that's why he saves the best for last. He saves the best wine for last. He saves the best of his works for last. And knowing this, the Apostle Paul can say, eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard, nor has the human heart conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. Christ is so unbothered by maintaining false impressions that he does not even restore things to the way they used to be. You see, he doesn't just recreate things and make them as they used to be. He makes them better instead. He didn't just make more of the same wine. He didn't just provide an abundance of the same wine. He made better wine. He won't just bring the world to its former glory and former state of perfection. No, he will make it even better. And John the Revelator, he had a glimpse of Christ's final work, of the best that he saves for last. And these were John's first impressions. This is what he says. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, see, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eye. Death will be no more, and mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. Dear friends, there are times when each and every one of us reaches a moment of crisis. There are times in our lives when the wine is failing. There are times in our lives when the money is failing, when the job is failing, when the hunt for a job is failing, when the friendships are failing, when the relationships are failing, when our bodies are failing, when our health is failing, when our mental health is failing, when our spiritual life is failing, when our devotional life is failing. And Lord have mercy, there are times when even the church is failing. But when we feel like our whole life is about to unravel, when we feel like our whole life, everything we've built so far is about to collapse and come crashing down like a house of cards. In those times, and I know that there are some of us who are feeling this way right now, and there are some of us who have been feeling this way for a long time. But in those times, no matter what your exact situation is, no matter what your impression about your life is right now, I want you to know that this is not how the story ends. Your current impression about your life, the life of your children, the life of your parents, the life of your friends, your current impression about the church, the state of the world, whatever your current impression is not how the story ends. Perhaps the wine has failed, but Christ is at the wedding. Maybe your life is falling apart, but Christ is in our midst. And the only thing for us to do, the only thing we can do, the only thing we must do is follow the best advice ever offered. The only advice truly needed. The last words of Mary. Just do whatever he tells you. And sometimes that means stepping way out of our comfort zone. Sometimes that means doing things that we're not comfortable with, doing things that make little sense to us. Sometimes it means trusting God even though what you are doing that makes no sense to you. Sometimes that means taking the water to the steward, knowing full well that it's water. Sometimes it means submitting that application, knowing full well that it's late. Sometimes it means sending that CV, knowing that it has gaps in it. Sometimes it means making that phone call, knowing full well that the person on the other end doesn't want to talk to you. Sometimes it means sending that message even though the last 3 times you sent it, you were left unread. Sometimes it means coming to church even though there are people there who don't want you there. Sometimes it means getting involved in church even though you know that there are people who would rather you not. Sometimes it means doing whatever he tells you. Sometimes that means trusting Christ enough to follow him against all odds. Sometimes it means being unconcerned about impressions and unbothered about opinions. And friends, I'm here to tell you that there are some impressions that are made in the 10th of a second. There are some impressions that are made before you could blink. On the other hand, there are other impressions that we have personally been curating and creating since we were born. There are impressions that as a society we've been working on and maintaining since the dawn of time. But I know that one day, no matter how quickly or how long it took for some impressions to be made, I know that one day, as Paul says, we will be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. And that's why he had the confidence to say, therefore, my beloved, be steadfast, be immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, because you know that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Or as Mary put it in fewer words, just do whatever he tells you. May God bless you all. Amen.
Amen. I want to thank you, Pastor, for such a timely message that where we currently are is not where our story ends. And so let us take that as we go on throughout our day. Let's not just leave here and forget about it, but let us take that with us throughout our day, throughout our week, and throughout our lives. And I just wanted to make sure that I have welcomed everybody. I did see some people come after the welcome, so I wanted to make sure that you did feel welcomed and that we are glad that you have come to worship here with us. I do want to point out Sister Aki and family. For those of us who in Luton Central remember Pastor Aki and the multiple blessings of sermons that he was able to give here, welcome. Thank you for coming, and it is a blessing to have you here. Also, to Pastor's wife and beautiful daughter, want to make sure you feel welcomed as well. Thank you. And so I want to thank all of those who took part. I am not going to go through every single name because I will forget. So for those of you who took part, you know who you are. Thank you, from Sabbath school right the way down to divine service. Church, have we been blessed? Amen. We always say that the youth are our future, but they are our present. And so we thank you for those who may have stepped out of their comfort zone and who chose to serve God. So thank you so much. Lunch is being served, so we're asking all the visitors, everybody, to stay for lunch. We then have AYS at 4 p.m. And then after AYS, I have been told that there is promise practice after AYS, so please stay. For those who are in the choir, please stay for the practice after that. So I'm going to ask the praise team to come up to sing the closing song. Please stand. One, two.
Let's sing Our God is Greater. Sing water, you turned into wine. You opened the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you. None like you. None like you. Into the darkness you shine. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. None like you. None like you. See, our God is greater. Say, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Say, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Water you turned into wine. You opened the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you. None like you. None like you. Into the darkness you shine. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. There's none like you. None like you. Our God is greater. Say, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against us? If our God is for us, then who can ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against us? If our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? And if our God is for us, then what could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? Stand against. We stand against. Stand against. Our God is greater. Our God is greater. Sing. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God.
All of you gathered here, and all of you watching this online now or in the future, wherever you are, whenever you are, may you be blessed by the words of the psalmist, who said, "How precious is your steadfast love, O God! All the people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings, and they feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see the light." Amen.
You're reminded that lunch is served, but as we leave, we're just going to go back and continue singing that song. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. Lord, you are higher. Thank you again for worshiping with us here at Luton Central.
Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than men. any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? Stand against. What can stand against? Stand against.
Our God is
greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our